Well, it's that time once again where we delve back into the realm of quackery with Dr. Gideon and his book, The MD Emperor Has No Clothes. What joy we are to be back here. So I hope you're sitting comfortably, because let's begin. Today we're on Chapter 10, 5 Laws to Rule Them All. I would like to continue for one more chapter to talk about homeopathic medicine. It is the subject that is close to my heart. Very interesting and very misunderstood. It's misunderstood. Misunderstood, it doesn't work, and you've admitted last chapter it doesn't work. The law that supposedly governs this, you've admitted doesn't work, and is pretty much magic. Its history also reveals allopathic hypocrisy quite nicely. So I can't just walk away from it without a little more embellishment, or how about a little bit more lies? And we'll get into that in a moment. A nice book can help you understand the evolution of homeopathic medicine. In the US, it's called Copeland's Cure. Indeed, this subject demands an entire book to explain it properly. No, you don't. You do not need an entire book to explain homeopathy. Basically, consider this: it's water, it's diluted. The more it's diluted, the more powerful it gets. And it doesn't work. There is any scientific evidence suggesting that it works. None whatsoever. And yet, as I've said continually throughout this entire book, he's had this opportunity to present evidence that his supposed theories work, and we are 57 pages into it, and yet he's done nothing of that. He's not provided a single shred of proof that any of what he said in this book can be actually backed up with facts. And I have no desire to take on that task, especially since Mr. Robbins has already done such a good job of it. There are a few salient points about homeopathic medicine which are worthwhile discussing here for a few pages, and understanding them, or understanding the holistic medicine, of also matter. So here we go. Homeopathy is comprised of 5 theoretical laws of nature. Not just 5 laws of nature, 5 theoretical laws of nature. 1, your law of similars, you've admitted to, doesn't know how it works, and you don't know how it works. I don't call that a theoretical law, I call that magic. So his 5 laws are the law of similars, the law of single remedy, Herring's law of cure, the law of miasmas, which was disproven, by the way, by Louis Pasteur, but you know, who cares about that? And the law of prototypization. We have already discussed 1 and 3, but it is interesting to note that whenever critics try to discuss homeopathy, they exclusively focus on the 5th law, and they never discuss any of the others. This is because the law of polarization seemingly flies in the face of our understanding of modern physics. So it is an easy target for lazy-ass critics. If it flies in the face of modern physics, then you better have a damn good excuse or damn good evidence to be able to back up your point, especially if you are going to say that this is a cure for, you know, viruses. You know, if you've banged on that you want to replace the modern medical system we have with a homeopathic one, but you have brought no evidence to the table that you want to sit at, that your medicines that you have suggested actually work. Now, maybe you might do it in this one. Let's see. Ironically, the law of polymerization is a relative minor one to most homeopaths. It only describes how our medicines are made, which again I think is a big point when apparently it's an easy for lazy ass critics. I wonder why, when all it is dilution of water. And not how we are to deliver them. Not how the body responds to them, not how the body reacts to them, or to the stress of life in general, and not what the physician must do to bring about a cure. These subjects are much more important and germane to the practical application of homeopathic medicine, and that the law of periodization, but that is, that when the critics of homeopathy get stuck on none the less. I'll let him continue. We'll get into it later. This is like going to a fantastic Broadway production of Cats and giving them a bad review by complaining that it is ridiculous to give animals human emotions and thoughts. It is a critique that completely misses the point. No. You are claiming that this law that you have is used to create medicines. Medicines that can supposedly heal people and cure people of various diseases as you have claimed. It is a valid criticism to go after you for that exact point, because, again, taking like a dilution of water and basically going drop, 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 and then taking the fifth one that you dropped it into somehow makes it more powerful, magically. It doesn't work. You need evidence to back up that point that fifth vial, which is supposedly the most powerful because it's the most diluted, concentrated form, doesn't work. You've got to actually scientifically prove that your medicines can work. And if that's one way you create your medicines, then no one's going to be on your side. No scientist in their right mind would join you in that. It's just unbelievable. It really is. But I'm not surprised by this point. We've been going through, 10 chapters now at this point, and he's basically just been saying the same thing. I remember when I was a boy that science had no answer that a simple question, how does a bumblebee fly? According to the laws of physics, bumblebees were too heavy for their little wings to provide enough lift to offset the pull of gravity to allow them to fly. This was evidenced by the fact that if you took a dead bird and spread its wings out and threw it, it would glide for a short distance. But if you did the same thing to a bumblebee, it would just tumble tumble end over end. That's right, until March 20th, 2000, scientists could not explain why bumblebees could fly. So did scientists go around saying bumblebees don't fly, it's an illusion? Don't trust your eyes? Of course not. There was an illogical assumption that something else must be going on with the mechanics of the bumblebee's wings that they were unaware of, and that one day we would eventually figure it out. Okay, so he's put a little thing. I'm going to go and read this. So, yeah, basically, scientists didn't say that, and this is not an anagram to your plight. We know bumblebees can fly because we can see them. And you can go, hey, that bumblebee can fly. Now, in 2000s, they did do a test which showed that bumblebees can flap their wings so fast and hard that they can break away and, get away from gravity. You, in all your history, so far in modern medicine, have been unable to show any scientific evidence that your homeopathic remedies actually work. So he continues. It was logically assumed that there must be something else going on with the mechanics of the bumblebee's wings, and that they were unaware of, and one day they would figure it out. But this is exactly what critics of homeopaths do. They run around like arrogant idiots, arrogantly proclaiming, it doesn't work, it can't work, it's all quackery, don't believe your eyes. And yet, you can't present any evidence that it works. You've written an entire book, and you haven't put a single piece of evidence in. By focusing exclusively on the fifth law, close-minded, quack-busting critics feel justified in completely discontinuing a system of medicine that has been curing people in clinical settings for over 200 years. Certainly not clinical settings, because you haven't done any clinical trials to prove that your medicines actually work. If this low-minded criticism wasn't so frustrating and dangerous... I'm not dangerous, I'm pointing out the fact that you're the one who's dangerous by pointing out your medicines work. It would be laughable. Here's the reason for the criticism. According to the law of polarization, a homeopathic medicine that has been diluted well beyond Avogadro's number will still retain its ability to produce a medical action in the body of anyone it's given to. Avogadro's number is the numerical constant that chemists use to help them determine the concentration of different solutions. That is what it means in layman's terms. It is that a homeopathic medicine which has been diluted so much that there isn't even one molecule of the original substance left in it, and will still create a psychological effect when administered. What sounds crazy, but that is exactly what happens every time and again. What have I just said about them diluting medicine? That is exactly the case. They have taken and they've looked at homeopathic medicines, and there's nothing in it. It's water or sugar. There's nothing that could actually give you any substantial medical benefit to it. A typical homeopathic medicine has been diluted so much that it is impossible for even one molecule of the original substance to remain in it. And yet it produces profound psychological effects time after time. Well, this is what we call the placebo. This is what we call the placebo effect, Pete. For a perspective of the dilation scale I'm talking about here, let's look at it this way. There is approximately 1,032 molecules of water in an Olympic-sized swimming pool. If that pool were filled with a homeopathic remedy diluted to 15C strength, exact, to get a single molecule from the original substance, one would need to swallow 1% of the volume of pool, roughly 25 metric tons of water. Are you with me? No, not at the moment, Pete. That sounds ridiculous. The medicines that homeopaths use to activate the law of similars are diluted to an unbelievable degree, and they still work. Instead of being awestruck by this paradoxical happenstance and rushing to discover its mechanism, quack-busting allopaths automatically dismiss the action of homeopathic remedies as the realm of placebo. And yes, homeopathic medicines have always showed that they are nothing more than placebos. It's up to you, Pete. Go out and do this study. I'm sure you've made a lot of money from your books. Why not do a study where you take your medicine and do a blind trial? Give one group no medicine, give one group what they think is the homeopathic medicine, and then give one group the homeopathic medicine, and then give another group actual real medicine. See what happens. But there's a risk of failure there, and Pete will never admit that, there's a risk of failure. He'll never do that. Where are we? Here we are. Instead of trying to figure out what is going on, the critics of homeopathy simply turn a blind eye to its critical successes. What clinical successes? And then this is what I'm saying about, he's had an entire book to document these and actually present them. He hasn't. We're on 59 pages so far, and he hasn't actually presented a single case of this. He hasn't presented a single bolt of evidence. This is like someone's car wheels falling off and there's no bolts, but yet the mechanic insists there are bolts on the tyre wheels even though they're rolling down the street. They continue to discount it as being utterly unscientific because the law of polymerization seems to deny the laws of physics. Yes, if something pretty much denies the laws of physics, you've pretty much got to have a damn good evidence to be able to back it up and show that the laws that we know to be true and pretty much accurate and correct are wrong. You're doing an awful job at presenting any evidence to that fact. Once again, the allopaths hypocritically use unscientific methodology to label something they don't like as unscientific. It's not hypocritical, and it's not unscientific methodology. What this type of mental process is the reflection of is scientific. No, it's dogmatic, close-minded, reactionary, and unrespectant. Yes, anybody who poo-poos homeopathy has had no experience with the use of homeopathic medicines in any clinical setting, has had no idea of the 5 laws of homeopathy, and has never ever read a homeopathic medical journal. I mean, the one that tells you if someone's having a heart attack to hold your hands over them and use energy healing. That medical book. Such an intellectual stance is insulting to the educated mind, but it is the norm in modern allopathic medical circles. Did I mention that the typical homeopathic medicine costs $10? That wasn't a typo, $10. Gee, I wonder if this makes the pharmaceutical companies nervous. Come on, I must be crazy. But then that's $10 on top of all this other stuff. You see, when you go to see these guys, they don't just give you one medicine. They give you hundreds of, they'll give you like 10 different ones with 10 different supplements. And as we've said before, you can go to 5 different homeopaths and get 5 different, come out with 5 different, symptoms, when, 5 different types of medicine. But this guy doesn't care. Come on, it couldn't be crazy. It couldn't possibly matter to them that an inexpensive, safe and gentle medicines capable of curing disease, you haven't proved that, were available. See references on the next page. Ooh, looking forward to that. Drug companies would just love that, wouldn't they? I mean, wouldn't it be great for them if people would actually be cured of disease and wouldn't have to take all those expensive drugs over and over again? Again, we're getting into the big pharma conspiracy, and I've said enough about the big pharma conspiracy, to be honest, to say that it's ridiculous. Then they wouldn't have to take any more drugs for those new symptoms and the suppressed symptoms drummed up. Not to mention the enormous amount of money people would save. Wouldn't the drug companies just love that? Or how about the hundreds of thousands of people that would probably die from taking your homeopathic remedies? You'd see the death rates skyrocket. The mere fact that drug companies are against homeopathic medical treatment should be a red flag to the intelligent reader and make him or her run to the nearest homeopath for treatment. No, it really doesn't. Because, as Gavin said, the big pharma conspiracy is nothing more than a conspiracy, and basically people are just jealous. If you don't believe me, go look up how much the alternative health industry is worth and how much money they make and how much money there is to make from being in that market. Pete makes a lot of money. He doesn't like to admit that he does. One day someone will discover the mechanism that supports the phenomenon of the law of prototypization. And then the homeopaths will be vindicated. Until then, you're an idiot, and you're a quack. Until you can actually prove, then you've got nothing, you've got no legs to stand on. This will be a discovery on par with uncovering the structure of DNA. It will be revolutionary, scientific breakthrough in medicine. Homeopaths will just have to quietly keep curing people with inexpensive, safe and gentle medicines. They're not inexpensive, because the homeopath will load you up with vitamins, because they've got to make money. Safe, certainly not. Again, only a couple of weeks ago, we did a video about the boy who's had that autism treatment from a naturopath, who ended up in hospital. So they are anything but safe and gentle. So the following information was an expert from the website of the National Centre for Homeopathy. Homeopathic medicine was first used for a wide-scale epidemic in 1801, when its founder, German physician Samuel Hahnemann, observed that a child was being treated with a homeopathic preparation of belladonna resisted scarlet fever, even though all three siblings were affected. Wondering whether the belladonna had acted preventatively, Hahnemann began giving it to children in other families when the first ones fell ill. He found that the protective described a 90% attack rate among those untreated. The method was so successful that regular physicians adopted it, and by 1838 the Prussian government made its use mandatory. Most recently, the US homeopathy was used in the influenza pandemic of the 1920s. The illnesses struck with such a force that people often died within 24 hours. 20% of the entire world populace was infected, and 20 to 4 million people died. The Journal of the American Institute of Homeopathy of May 1921 had a long article about the use of homeopathy in the flu epidemic. Dr. T.A. McCann from Dayton, Ohio, reported 24,000 cases of flu treated allopathically, and the mortality rate was 28%, while 26,000 cases of flu treated homeopathically had a mortality rate of 1.5%. This last figure was supported by Dr. W. A. Preston of Philadelphia, who collected 260,000 case files of flu treated with homeopathy. With the above result, Dr. Herbert A. Roberts from Derby, TC, said that 30 physicians in Connecticut responded to his request for data. They reported 6,000 cases with 55 deaths, which is less than 1%. Dr. Roberts was working as a physician on a troop ship during World War I, where he had 81 flu cases on the way over to Europe. He reported and recovered that all recovered and all landed successfully. Every man received homeopathic treatment. One other ship that used conventional medical treatment lost 31 on the way. And this magical treatment, by the way, what I've just said, all unpublished work. Not a single one has actually been published. So, how can we verify it? How can we, do that important thing that we do in science called peer review? Where another scientist, say a medical scientist this time, takes that finding, looks it over, checks to see if, things were done right, and, looks into it for himself. Were these right? We don't know because it was unpublished. But there you go, that's the end of that chapter. Oh, this is the one I've been waiting for. Oh, this is the one I've been waiting for. Look forward to this next time, because chapter 11 is all about the vital force. Yep, we go into the magical realm of spirit science.